Hello, hello, good morning. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the Friday 10 a.m. technique at the Pet Parade online crop. And we had a little bit of a different day yesterday, and my apologies. I had a medical procedure that I had to go to late yesterday afternoon, so we didn't have our afternoon demo or our evening chat and craft. I ended up, once I got home in the evening, I ended up just kind of sleeping for the for the rest of the evening, dozing away, and because I had a sedation during the procedure, so I wouldn't have been much company during chat and craft. But we're on this morning, and we're going to be creating, and our technique for today is block those colors. And if you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. If you're watching later on replay, you can say replay and drop a comment. I see my mom is watching. Good morning, Mom. Joining all the way from across the border down in Indiana, visiting some family. And Deborah's here too. Good morning, good morning. Just giving everybody a chance to find us and jump on in. I had a bit of technical jiggery that I had to do this morning. So third time's the charm, and we are now live. Hooray! And I almost got the camera set up right. It's a little bit on an angle, but not too awful. Just don't look at the bottom. It's kind of a little angle going on at the bottom. Anyway, we are going to be creating today. We're going to be using some cardstock. We're going to be using some foil paper. We're going to be doing some heat embossing and regular embossing. We are also going to be doing some stamping, and we're going to be using the same stamp set that we used yesterday. In fact, two of the same stamp sets that we used yesterday, and they are the Pets and More stamp set that has the fun cats and dogs and an owl and a bunny and a fox. And then we're also going to be using the Friends for Life stamp set. And those two seem to work really well together. And once you buy things like this, I think it's important to know that you can use them again and again for different things. So today we're going to be creating with those, and let's get started. So I think I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. Sometimes we start with the embellishment and work our way backward, but today I think I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. So I'm starting out with a piece of basic white cardstock that has been cut to 8.5 by 5.5, and I have scored it in the center at 4 1/4. I'm going to fold that with the bump side to the inside, and this is going to make us a vertical or portrait standard size 4 1/4 by 5.5 card. Then we're going to add a second piece of basic white. Sometimes it's nice just to put a layer of white on white, but we're going to bump it up a little bit. Good morning, Allison. Nice to see you're watching. And so this is a piece of basic white that has been cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and we're going to do some embossing on this. And we're going to be using the Dotted Circles 3D embossing folder because it creates just a really fun, funky texture in the background, kind of bubbly and nubbly. And so I've got that here with my Big Shot, clunk. And let me grab the folder. We are going to run this through in the folder, but what I want to do is I want to take my piece of basic white. Sorry, I'm really close to the camera right now. And I want to try and center it on the center of the embossed image, because I think that kind of gives us a nice look to have it centered. So I'm just using the concentric rings to kind of line up. So I've got my 4 points coming out in the same sort of spot, and that's how I know I'm in the center. Then you make your sandwich in your embossing folder, whatever, or in your embossing machine, whatever works with your machine. And then you're going to run that through. I think we all sort of have seen this process, if not done it ourselves before. And let me just throw my other plate in that I don't use with the embossing, and then we'll get rid of the machine. There we go. So now when we take this out, you will see that there is quite a detailed and quite a raised texture to the cardstock, creating those fun concentric rings. How cool are those? And that just makes a really fun background. It doesn't even have to have any color on it, although I know our technique is color blocking. It doesn't have any color on it, and that's going to allow whatever we add on top to shine through. So let's go ahead and attach this to the front of our card. And because this has so many textural pieces, it's not laying flat on my card. I'm going to add an extra little bit of adhesive there to make sure it all gets stuck down. I'm going to take the backing off. There we go. And then we can center this, and there will be a little bit of the plain cardstock card base showing all the way around. But how fun is that with those beautiful, I've got little bits of something that came off of my embossing machine. How beautiful is that just to start with? Good morning, Heather. Happy Friday. Next, I want to bring in some silver foil. And this silver foil, I have 4 pieces of it, 4 little pieces, and it has been cut to 1.5 by 2.25 inches. So I have 4 of those, and I'm going to kind of create a pattern on my card front. And I want to bump these up with some dimensionals, so I'm just going to flip them all over and add dimensionals onto the back of them before we start. So we'll just get them all dimensioned up. And this is kind of important when you're adding things on top of such a textured, embossed piece of cardstock, is that you're going to need something to lift your next piece up so that it sits level, because otherwise it's going to be kind of wonkadoodle with all of the ups and downs from the embossing. All right. So just adding these dimensionals. And of course, we've got our edge pieces, but as you can see, my edge pieces don't go all the way around. That's because I chop them up and I use them. Waste not, want not. Now on our card, we have, I'm going to kind of try and envision 4 quarters on our card. The inspiration for my card was sort of an Andy Warhol type inspiration. So our card is 5.5 inches tall. So that gives us 2 3/4 as our center horizontally. And so I'm just going to line my ruler up here just to give me an idea. And then I'm going to remove the backings from one of my silver foil panels. And I want to create so we're kind of going with kaleidoscope and Andy Warhol all in one. So what I want to do is use my tweezers for one thing, because that way my fingers are out of the way and I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to kind of envision the center of my card, which is 2 1/8 inches vertically, and then 2 3/4 going side to side. So I want to have this point of my silver foil, the bottom right, at about the 2 3/4, and the top right point at about 2 1/8. So just making that diagonal thing. I know that's a lot of jiggery pokery for one little piece of silver foil, but it will make sense as we build our pattern. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to be using these 4 pieces, and I'm going to try and create a diamond shape in the center. So let's go again. And now our second one is a little bit easier because we have our first one to go off of. So there we go. Just get it in there on that angle. Now the bottom ones, I'm going to remove my ruler and just kind of go with the flow now. So we're going to keep in mind that we're creating a diamond shape in the center, and that's going to guide us as to what angle. So up here we tip the tops towards the center. At the bottom, we're tipping the bottom toward the center and the top out so that those points meet up there. And I'm just going to give myself the line of 2 1/8 so I don't tip too far. There we go. And then my last one. So it's good when you're creating that you have some kind of surface below where your layout or your card is that has some grid lines if you want to do a little bit of lining up and measuring. And then of course our last one is easier because all those other points are already there. And there we go. Now I did somehow shift a little bit over to the right, but that's not going to bother me. I'm going to just not worry about it. There's a little bit more gap over here. Totally okay. It just means that I've tipped these a little more aggressively than this side. All right. So we said we were doing color blocking. Good morning, Diane. So for our color blocking, I have chosen 4 colors from the Regals color collection. So I have crushed curry, real red, blueberry bushel, and shaded spruce. And I kind of wanted to have these very graphic, very sort of primary, although green is not a primary, but we have our primaries and one secondary color. And so we're going to layer these up as well. So let's flip all these over and we'll add some adhesive. Now these are going to be going on top of the foil, so we don't have to worry about the embossing. At this point, we're going to be sticking these to the foil, so we just need regular adhesive. There we go. And then we can take our backings off as we go along. So we're going to start with the blueberry bushel. And this one's going to go up in this top left, just because that's where I chose. So what I want to do is I want to, again, keep in mind my halfway point. I'm going to come a little closer to myself. The halfway point from the bottom, which is 2 3/4. So this point will now be on the 2 3/4. And then this point will be sort of at the 2 1/8. So you just got to kind of lay it on there. So we're going a little bit this way and a little bit that way with our color blocking on top of our foil. So we're creating kind of a little twisty bit, which makes me think of that, you know, kaleidoscope thing that happens, right? So then our next piece will be the real red, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come in 2 3/4 up and 2 1/8 in, like so. And then our next one on the bottom left, we're going to use the crushed curry. So because we tipped in here, we're going to tip in down here, and we're going to kind of create a horizontal diamond. Here we had an elongated vertical diamond. Now we're creating a horizontal one. So let's stick that one down. It always helps to kind of, you could do random, but if you don't want to do completely random, it helps to create a set pattern that you are working on to create these ones. And then will look more cohesive. It looks random, but it's more cohesive than random, if that makes any sense. And then our next piece we're going to bring in is basic white cardstock. Again, I have 4 pieces. These have been cut to 1 1/4 by 2 inches of basic white, and we're going to do some stamping on here. I'm just going to move this out of the way so we have more room. And we're going to bring in the cute owl from the Pets and More stamp set. And today we are talking about our feathered pets. And so I thought it would be fun. Not very many people have a pet owl. Do you remember the film from years and years ago called Owls in the Family? Yeah, I remember watching that in public school. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to stamp up some owls on these pieces of basic white. We're going to start with the crushed curry. We'll get that opened up. Tap, tap, tap. Nice and gentle. And then we're going to stamp, hopefully in the center. I'm looking at an angle. Oh, did pretty good. So there's our crushed curry. Now I'm going to need to wash my stamp in between. So I've got my Stampin' Scrub here. I sprayed it with a little bit of water this morning. There we go. Just kind of scooch it off a bit. Close this up. Next, we're going to come in with the Real Red. Scooch that out of the way. Every time, just because we've washed our stamp, we make sure we season it. We make sure that it's dry. Otherwise, you'll get sort of puddling on your stamp if there's wetness on there. And that's not exactly a look we want today. Sometimes it's a look we want, but not today. So that's the Real Red in the owl. And I think it's super fun. It creates kind of a very graphic image, reminiscent of Andy Warhol, when you create with the same image over and over again. Now we're coming in with the shaded spruce, our green color that we're using. There we go. Give that a wash. So that was the shaded spruce, and these are all from the Regals color family. And then the last one is the blueberry bushel. Oops, let's make sure we've done that. And then we stick our finger in the ink too. We're coloring. We're blocking the color. We might as well stick our finger in it. I think I managed to not do it. It was pretty close though. All right. Close this up. And take that away and bring back in our card. And now we can add some adhesive to the back of these guys. You notice on my arm I have some ink, some pen. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but when I went in for my thing yesterday at the clinic, because they sedate you. When I woke up, I had ink on my arm, so I'm not sure what it's for. It doesn't say anything. It's just, I think somebody accidentally wrote on me. My husband said maybe they were trying to get their pen to work. They used me for the paper. Oh, you never know, right? Somebody just had it in their hand or stuck in their pocket. All right, so now we have our 4 birds here. Let's take our blue one first. Let's see. I'm going to have more success doing it this way. There we go. And we're going to bring the ruler back in for this because I just want to make sure I get things where I want them. So let me line it up here. And our halfway point is 2 3/4. So we're going to come up 3 inches from the bottom. Right there. And might as well use these because it keeps my fingers out of the way. And I want to stick these on straight. Everything else was angled, but I want my little birds to be on straight. And we're going to match the ink color with the cardstock color because we're blocking those colors. And even though we've got some fun embossing behind and we've got some gorgeous foil in behind, we want to keep those colors one on top of the other. There we go. Now, just because it's blocking colors, it doesn't mean it has to be squares or rectangles. I could have done this with circles, ovals, hearts, stars. Doesn't really matter. It's just keeping the colors together. and creating this kind of multiple colored patterned effect. And there we go. That's our last one. And you can see that that's very reminiscent of like a kaleidoscope, as you know, you shift it and all the little shapes just kind of move this way and that way, and there's a little bit of shine. And so then we need to add our sentiment on here. And for our sentiment, I'm going to do another kind of embossing, which is the heat embossing. I've got a piece of black cardstock that I've cut to 3/8 by about 3 inches. And I've already treated it with an anti-static pouch so that the static is taken off of it, so that when we apply our embossing powder, the embossing powder doesn't stick in all the places we don't want it to stick, right? I've got the word thank you, or the sentiment thank you, from the Friends for Life stamp set. Nice little thank you here. And I'm going to ink it up with some Versamark ink. Stamp it here. I'm going to move it close to myself so I can hopefully get it in the center from top to bottom. It doesn't really matter end to end because I left a little extra space for for trimming off and, you know, keep making up for oopsies. We're going to throw our embossing powder on there. We're going to tap it off. There we go. And hopefully, because we use that anti-static, our embossing powder is exactly where we want it to be. I'm going to use that as a funnel and then close this up. Nothing worse than knocking over your embossing powders. All right, then we're going to bring in our heat tool, whatever kind of heat tool you're going to use. And what you want to do is just let it warm up and then come at your embossing powder. And if you hold it up from your work surface, the hot air will swirl around it. It will actually make the embossing powder go faster, do its process, and it'll go from dry and dull looking and powdery to shiny and bright and white in just a few seconds. And by keeping it up off of your work surface too, that combats any chance of having, you know, the finish on your table get ruined or anything like that. Then you can just come in with a tissue or something. I often just use my pants to brush that anti-static powder off. In fact, the pants work better all the time, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Don't know what it is about pants, but they're just the perfect thing. Although I've heard that microfiber is also good for taking care of that. Now I'm going to trim a little bit off this end and just use my paper snips for that. And then I'm going to create a dovetail. First I'm going to snip in the center from the end, just a little snip, and then I'm going to snip from the corner to the top of that snip, and then from the other corner to the top of that snip, and that just helps me create a nice little dovetail on the end of my piece of cardstock. And then I want to kind of line it up here and get an eyeball for where I want to trim off the end. I think right about there. We'll add a bit of adhesive just where it's going to sit on top of my owl. Take the backing off. And here again, I'm going to use my tweezers for this so that I can line it up without my big fingers in the way. So I'm kind of aiming to have the end of my black cardstock not go to the edge of my card, but to the edge of the embossed area at the bottom, like that first layer that we put on, and then just line it up like that, and there we go. That is our completed project for today, doing our color blocking reminiscent of Andy Warhol and a bit of a kaleidoscope effect as well. We started out with our basic white card base, adding in that 3D embossing folder that, what is it called? Dotted circles. See, that should be easy to remember. That creates that fun texture in the background that just kind of pops through. Then those pieces of the silver foil for a little bit of shine. And then our different colored cardstocks from the Regals collection, stamping our owls in the blueberry bushel, real red, crushed curry, and garden green. Sorry, shaded spruce. I keep getting those two mixed up. And then heat embossing our sentiment from the Friends for Life collection onto some black cardstock and adding it on top. And I don't think we need any bling. The horror. No bling on this card because we have that nice silver foil. Plus we have those dotted circles in the background, and I think enough is going on this card already, and we're just going to focus on those beautiful color blocks that we've created. So I hope you enjoyed seeing those techniques, and if you create a project like this, be sure to snap some photos of it, pop it in the comments where I post my photos, and then we can all see and be inspired by the art that you share. All right, have a wonderful rest of your morning. We'll be on at 11:30 for Chat and Craft. We'll see you then. Toodaloo. Bye.